Hi everyone, today I'm talking about INFJ males and white knight syndrome. This video is for INFJ males primarily and some INFP males. I will say I've seen this also in INFP males, but it's really an INFJ male thing. I've seen this in a lot of INFJ males, both those I've worked with as clients and those who have been students in my classes and those who have emailed me and asked me for life advice. This is something that comes up very frequently for INFJ males. INFJ males have a really strong protector energy because INFJs are introverts and maybe have social anxiety and can be a bit reticent. Sometimes we don't see this energy on the surface right away, but if you get to know an INFJ male, whether you are romantically involved with an INFJ male or you're friends with an INFJ male, underneath the surface, as you get to know them, you will see they have this really strong protector energy. That's something that comes from the light masculine, the light side of masculinity, is this protector energy, this very generous energy of I'm here for you, I will be a support for you, I will protect you if you need it, whatever that means. And maybe that means I have to make a sacrifice, I have to be selfless, have some self-sacrifice involved, but I will do it in order to protect you. That is something that you will see in a lot of INFJ males. What happens with this, they sort of have this embodiment of the white knight, right? Like the knight who comes in and saves people and protects people and brings justice, that white knight archetype. That's what we see in the INFJ male. And because they have that kind of archetype going on, they are attracted frequently to the damsel in distress, which is another archetype that people can embody. Now, I do want to say you don't have to be a man to embody white knight energy, and you don't have to be a woman to embody damsel in distress energy. I have seen both genders embody either of these types. It really depends on you and the type of energy you're working, our life circumstances, our personality characteristics, what kind of person we are. It depends on what kind of archetypes we take on. So this isn't all the time a man-woman thing, but it is frequently a man-woman thing. So INFJ males who have the white knight will be attracted to the damsel in distress. The damsel in distress, it's an archetype that's really trying to learn about power. People who are working the damsel in distress archetype appear helpless on the surface, and they may remain helpless for some time. But what the damsel in distress is really trying to do is learn how to save herself. Some damsels in distress who want to stay in the damsel in distress energy will seek the white knight. They're looking outside of themselves for help. They're not being independent. They're not being self-sufficient. They're really grasping outside of themselves for external things or an external support to help them out of crisis. They're not doing it for themselves. So it can be a very disempowered archetype, but it is an archetype that is trying to move toward greater empowerment. Once healed, once the damsel in distress is out of crisis, and if she heals this pattern where she is grasping outside of herself, looking for external support, looking for someone to save her, if she heals that kind of energy dynamic, usually she will leave the white knight because there's no need for the white knight and the damsel in distress to be together after that point. They don't really need each other any longer. Although the white knight would often disagree. The white knight often feels abandoned when the damsel in distress heals herself and moves on and moves out of his life. The other type that the white knight tends to attract, and I will say white knights tend to be attracted to damsels in distress, but they tend to attract toward them the femme fatale. This is a different archetype. The femme fatale tends to be attracted toward the white knight. And what happens with that, the femme fatale will usually entice the white knight, seduce them, bring them into their web, and then the white knight becomes the victim of the femme fatale. So the damsel in distress is a disempowered feminine archetype, but the femme fatale is more of a dark feminine archetype. It's definitely on the side of the dark feminine. The femme fatale is known for being manipulative and cunning, using manipulation to get what she wants. The femme fatale can be hot and cold and can switch between hot and cold very quickly. They tend to be very seductive at first, and they might have a mix of sort of like this very attractive womanly appeal, but also this very childlike quality about them. They can also be, and usually are, extremely emotionally shut down. So although they might appear warm and bubbly on the surface to entice people in, once you get past that exterior, you will find they're very calculating and they're very cut off from their emotions, and they don't usually bring emotion in when making decisions because they're mostly engaged in manipulation and trying to get what they want. And a lot of femme fatales are also toxic narcissists, not surprising. So they will tend to leave relationships with absolutely no feeling about it very quickly. They will shut off their emotions, they're done, they're gone, and then the person that they're with feels abandoned. INFJs who have white knight energy, who become involved with femme fatales, will feel very foolish and very hard on themselves afterward. Like, how did I not see it? Or I can't believe I didn't see this coming. Or even like they're crazy. Like, I don't understand what happened. When we first got together, she was so warm. She even pursued me. It was so exciting. And then somewhere in there, she really switched off. And she became very cold, and she became manipulative and almost like this person I didn't recognize. How did I get involved with such a narcissistic personality? That's the femme fatale at work. And the white knight, the INFJ male who is the white knight, can be deeply hurt from this and have very deep wounds that take a long time to heal, and almost feel embarrassed about talking about those wounds or seeking help for those wounds, or even acknowledging that they need to have some healing around those wounds because they feel like they got burned by someone who they should have seen was going to burn them. So the solution is, if you're an INFJ male and you're recognizing yourself in these patterns and you're saying, oh yeah, I always get involved with the damsel in distress, the femme fatale, it's first to recognize that what you have going on is a need to play the rescuer in relationships. This might have come from your childhood with your mother or someone else, or it might be something that you've developed in adulthood. It can feel very addicting to become the rescuer in relationships, usually because when you first start rescuing people, you will attract more victims into your field. They can feel that you're a rescuer, and the rescuer and the victim go together, just like the white knight and the damsel in distress go together. So they're complementary energies. And then when you have this pattern over and over and over, it's sort of like you get a dopamine hit every time you feel like you've rescued someone because you feel needed. You feel needed, you feel like you're helping them. INFJs love to help people. It's part of our core purpose here. It's part of our soul purpose here to help other people and to really encourage other people in their own growth and evolution. So when we feel like we can support somebody, we can save somebody, we can fix something for somebody, we can meet somebody's needs, we feel needed, we feel useful, and that really does a lot for our self-esteem, and we will get that dopamine hit from it. With femme fatales and damsels in distress, the crisis points will also be very intense and it will feel very extreme. So it won't be like, she lost something and you helped her find it. She lost her earring and you helped her find it and you were her white knight. It will be much more extreme than that. Usually damsels in distress and femme fatales will always be in some sort of crisis situation where the stakes feel very high and it almost will feel life or death, and they really need somebody. So when the INFJ male can come in and help them and really help them out of that crisis, there's a big dopamine hit from that. There's a big self-esteem boost, and it can become very addicting, especially if it happens over and over and over, which it usually will in the beginning of these types of relationships. So you want to watch for this. You want to watch for this pattern in order to spot that type of energy going on. So the damsel in distress, what you can watch for is the woman in crisis. Of course, everybody now and again is in crisis. That's a very human thing to go through. So you don't want to just look for one crisis. You want to look for a pattern of crises that happen over time. With the damsel in distress and the femme fatale, one of the strategies they'll use is they will be in a relationship that is turned toxic, usually not only because of their energy, but the other person's. They've already have been in some sort of dysfunctional rescuer, victim, femme fatale, victim web. They've already got that going on in a primary relationship. That relationship has turned toxic. It might even be abusive. It might be physically abusive. It might be emotionally abusive. They might just have problems, and the femme fatale or the damsel in distress is painting it as an abusive situation. But the femme fatale or the damsel in distress will use that situation as a crisis point to lure in the next white knight, the next INFJ male, if you happen to be the white knight. And then they'll launch themselves into a new relationship with you. So it's sort of like the way you guys got together was because she had to leave this awful relationship, and then immediately, now she's with you, now you're in a new relationship. It's happened so fast, there hasn't been any time to slow down and say, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing? Are we moving too fast? Like, can we slow down? Do we really need to move in together right now? We've only known each other a couple months. It usually happens in such an intense way, and the damsel in distress or the femme fatale will paint things to be so urgent. I have to get out now. I don't have anywhere else to live. We have to get closer and closer right now. I need money right now. I need this, I need that. Very quickly, the femme fatale or the damsel in distress will have a lot of needs that the white knight needs to fulfill, and a lot of inappropriate needs, quite honestly. Usually these types of relationships, the people haven't known each other that long, they're not even really sure what they're doing, and the femme fatale or the damsel in distress is really hurrying things along. I have to get out of this other relationship. The ex of that person, the ex of the damsel in distress, or the femme fatale is painted as the villain, right? This villain is after me, he's imprisoning me, he's abusing me, I have to get away from him. It all rests on you, the white knight. And so then, once that old relationship is left, she's launched herself into the new relationship with you. Now it's all about healing her. Now it's all about she's the one with the broken wing, she's the one that needs to be mended, and quite a lot of work and energy goes into healing her. The needs of the white knight are pushed to the side. There is no room for the INFJ male's needs in this situation because she is going through such an intense period of healing from this relationship she just left. At this point, usually the INFJ male white knight is actually still okay with the situation. We are natural healers. It feels okay to us to put our needs on hold while someone else is healing. However, what happens usually after this is this relationship starts turning toxic. She starts to become more manipulative. She starts to become maybe more critical. She might even become abusive herself and push the INFJ male into situations where he's fighting back or he's lashing out. Things have become very bad very quickly. Just as things escalated very quickly in the beginning, now they are becoming bad and toxic very quickly as well. And that's sort of what happens with damsels in distress and femme fatales. The relationship is a whirlwind. The entire relationship is a whirlwind. Meeting them, getting together with them, being with them, the breakup, nothing is steady. Nothing happens over a long period of time. It's all very rushed and very frantic, and there's crisis influencing the energy of the entire relationship. So it's hard to slow down and think about what you want. It's hard to slow down and examine the choices you're making. And again, many femme fatales, most femme fatales are narcissists, and some damsels in distress are too. And things tend to move very quickly with narcissists because they don't want you to slow down and stop and think. So that's why you need to watch for these archetypes in the beginning, right? So ask people about their relationship history, right? Like, how has their relationship history gone? Are they launching themselves from one bad relationship into the next very quickly? If they have a pattern of that, it's very likely they have a damsel in distress thing or a femme fatale thing going on. Femme fatales will also come on very strong, very hot in the beginning. They really want to push past boundaries. They will test boundaries right away. They will push against all the boundaries you have just to see what they can do. They're into power and control, which can feel interesting and exciting in the beginning, but what you will see with femme fatales is they won't stop. They won't have respect actually for what you want or how you feel about it. They'll just kind of steamroll past your boundaries, and they will try to violate your boundaries in a lot of little ways at first to see how much you will put up with, how far they can push it. They will also flip between hot and cold. They'll flip to cold very quickly when they can't get what they want. So they'll come on very strong and hot. They'll push you for something you're uncomfortable with. When you say no, they will turn very cold, and they will use guilt, and they will try to trigger shame, and they will use all sorts of emotional manipulation to get what they want. Both of these types may be histrionic. Damsels in distress and femme fatales both may be histrionic when they're in a warm phase. So they might cry a lot or be very theatrical. They might cause scenes in public. When they're becoming emotional, they may clutch their chest or act like they're going to pass out. It is sort of like the Victorian lady who needs the fainting couch and the smelling salts, right? They might seem to even be able to well up tears on cue. It might seem eerie where you'll say, there's no way they could be fake crying because they can just do it so easily and effortlessly. No one can just cry on demand like that. Yes, femme fatales and damsels in distress, a lot of them can. Histrionic personalities often can cry on command. It's something they have been perfecting since childhood. So be on the lookout for that. Anyone who has, not that they're just emotional, some people are just very emotional and that's fine, but anyone who seems to be very theatrical when they are emotional, when they seem to be aware that there is an audience, or you could almost see them on stage, sort of performing this, right? Their emotions seem performative. That is indicative of a histrionic personality type. So once you can see these signs, once you can watch for these red flags, pay attention to them. And it will be hard because if you are an INFJ male with white knight syndrome, you will be very attracted to all of this, to the hot and the cold and the pushing past boundaries and the testing and the histrionic, theatrical emotions, the crises. You will be very attracted to all of it. It will feel very dramatic. It will feel very exciting. It might even lead you to be fixated on the person and sort of obsessing about them, right? But you really want to take a step back and see these red flags for what they are. When you are looking to choose a partner and you don't want someone who is employing all of this emotional manipulation, you want to seek someone who's steady. That's always a really good sign. As I said, we all have our crises. That's part of being human, but you want to seek someone who's not always having a crisis. They're not always at a crisis point every week, every time you talk to them. Someone who is steady and someone who is not afraid to ask for help, but is also self-sufficient. You don't feel like their very life hangs on whether or not you help them, whether or not you show up for them. And someone who doesn't play games, someone who's direct in their communication. If they're emotional, they let themselves have their emotions, but again, they're not performing them for you. And they also allow space for you in the relationship. It's not all about them and their drama and their crisis and their needs. You are also allowed to show up and to take up space and to have your own needs. And this can be very difficult for INFJ males to show up and take space and have needs and communicate about all of it. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. I do all sorts of videos for INFJ personality types and INFP personality types. Please also subscribe to my newsletter. You get a free book, The INFJ Revolution, and I send out tons of stuff over my newsletter, I will say. Classes, courses, workshops, new book releases, book recommendations, free resources. I send quite a lot of stuff through the newsletter, and I don't keep my website updated very well. So if you're interested in getting into a class, I teach a new class just about every month. Please sign up for my newsletter and you'll get all the notifications and announcements about new classes and a bunch of other things when they come out. Thanks so much everyone for watching today. I'll see you next time.